Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Belinda Carr Show. Today, we're going to be talking about supply chain issues.
So this is definitely something you've talked about. We've talked about in multiple podcasts and videos, and here it is, May 2022, and it's still very much relevant.
Absolutely, yeah, we've all been dealing with this for over 2 years now. It's unfortunately become.
It's unfortunately the catch-all for every issue we have nowadays. As far as getting any sort of supplies, it's always just supply chain issues, and I'm looking forward to the day when that ends.
Do you think it is going to? It's just still going to be used as a reason for any issue.
It's going to wane at a certain point. It will. I mean, not to bring it up, but much like the pandemic did.
So there's a company called Build4Less. They sell a variety of building products like insulation, roofing materials, and all sorts of other building products, both to DIYers and everyday consumers, but also to contractors and subcontractors out on job sites. I've been in touch with them for a while now, over a year. They sponsored a couple of my videos, and they have obviously been dealing with these supply chain issues. So I recently reached out to them, asked them if they would like to share those experiences on our podcast. All right, so today we're with Johnpaul Manning, the owner of Build4Less in Ireland. Thanks for joining us, Johnpaul.
No problem. It's great to be here. Nice to see you, Belinda.
Nice to see you too. So your two main companies are Insulation for US and Roofing for US. And I've mentioned you all several times in my videos. We've had a sponsorship going on for a while now. So when did you start these two companies?
Well, I originally started in the US a number of years ago, actually. I think it was around 2012. I set up an e-commerce business in Florida with a company called ProBuild. And I was selling their construction materials in Florida. And that was a bit of a mistake, really, because it was at the beginning of the real downturn in the economy. And Florida was really badly hit with the downturn. And ProBuild at that time only had one branch in Tampa and one branch in Miami, if my memory serves me correct. And moving goods in Florida across two branches to customers all over Florida was just a logistical nightmare. And I think initially when I came over to the US, I was a bit of a greenhorn and as to exactly how big the US really is. Because when you look at a point on a map on the US, go, oh, sure, here and here, they're not too far away. Because in my head at the time, I'm comparing that distance when I look at a map of Ireland or the UK.
Like, oh, it's a 2-hour drive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 2-hour drive, where in the US, it's a 6-hour drive. So I kind of worked on that for about 2 years, and I kind of realized it wasn't really working. Just moving goods around was just too difficult. But I had then set up my UK business, which is Insulation4Less.co.uk. And that just went from strength to strength really in the UK, because we kind of started very early. I think it was around 2012, late 2012, when we launched Insulation4Less in the UK. And we were very early into the market with regards to our idea of e-commerce and construction materials and e-commerce. And I had done it in Ireland previously. I had Build4Less.ie in Ireland, and that was really for me the training ground. And I sold that business after I launched in the UK, just to focus on the UK. And that just grew and grew, continued to grow. And I had kept the US business as such kind of on the sideline or on the back burner for a number of years, because I always wanted to go back and finish what I started. Because effectively, Build4Less.us.com was what I called it at the time. In my mind, was a failure. It was something I failed at. And even though my construction company, because I was in construction prior to I got into e-commerce, even though that business stopped to trade because of the economy, the bubble, and construction burst, I didn't necessarily view that as a failure, because construction companies all over the world stopped trading because people just stopped buying houses. So to me, that wasn't really a failure. But
with the others, you felt like there was something to prove to yourself. There was something unfinished.
Yeah, so when I left Florida, well, I didn't live there. I just kind of traded the business from there. When I ceased to trade that, I kept the company alive, and I knew I was going to come back at some stage with another idea. And I focused on the UK. And then I think it was around 2016, I decided that I would do something similar in the US, what I've been doing in the UK that's been a success, and that was installationforus.com. And I
So you
flew
sell a
over from,
variety of products on insulation for US, mineral,
yeah,
fiberglass,
fiberglass,
polyiso panels.
polyiso, the rigid boards. We also would have like spray foam installations, anything really to do with insulation. And we're actually trying to move more into natural wools and more environmentally friendly products as well. So that's an area we're moving into also. And and it was that move and kind of moving into the insulation sector in the US that really started to work for us, because we focused in on a specific area of products that we knew everybody needed, and was going to be easier to kind of stay in the sphere as what we have been in the UK. So we've done a number of deals with manufacturers and distributors all across the US, and that's where it all started to snowball then into being able to offer nationwide delivery. Because at the early stages, when I went to people with the idea and we're trying to raise money and all the things that a startup does, everybody was telling me, don't go nationwide, don't go nationwide, it'll be a big mistake. And I said, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it nationwide, or I'm not going to do it at all, because it was going to be so difficult to segment
Yeah.
out each part of the US and kind
And
of
there's more
try to figure out.
confusion with customers.
Yeah, a whole lot
Yeah.
more confusion. So I said, no, I'm going to do it. And they said I was going to fail. And I said, I won't fail. But luckily enough, I didn't. And we kept signing on. New manufacturers, new distributors kept coming on board. New products kept going up. And more customers just kept coming to us. So that's been a very good success, thank God. And then from that then came the roofing site, roofingforus.com.
Yeah.
So, and that really spawned from when I went over to Dallas, I think it was in 2019. I went to Roofing Expo, and I primarily went over to meet my existing suppliers and just kind of meet, talk about new deals, meet some new people. And it was a real eye opener, because I realized how big the roofing sector was in the US. And I went, wow, the roofing sector is very big. And it rang true to me more because I'm a carpenter by trade. I served my time as a carpenter when I left school. And the roofing sector felt more at home to me because I was more used to that element of construction. So for me, a move into the roofing sector in the
It felt
US
like a
was very,
natural
very
thing.
easy.
Yeah.
It was a natural thing. And
So
e-commerce had,
how different are the materials used in the US compared to the materials used in Ireland or the US?
there wouldn't be a huge difference. I suppose the US have more of a focus on glass walls and mineral walls, more so than what you'd see in Europe. So in the likes of the UK and Ireland, polyiso would be probably the more favored material to reach U values in this country. So you guys would call them more values over there. So where a U value would be the calculation of the overall building. They're very strict in Europe to reach very, very low U values. So polyiso is the preferred insulation of choice, if you like. Where in the US, it's more mineral wool and glass wool. And I think that change is starting to happen over in the US as well with you guys, where polyisos are becoming asked for more and more because they will achieve better R values. Right, there's other downsides, of course, to polyiso boards compared to the likes of your mineral wools and things like that. But both have their pros and cons. Polyisos will do a better job if done correctly with getting better R values. But then you have your mineral wools, which they're cheaper on your glass wools, they're cheaper. And then of course your mineral wool has a much higher fire rating as well.
Yes.
So that's obviously for a lot of people, that's what they will kind of opt for,
Yeah.
So And then, of course, your obvious ones, which would be your metric and imperial measurements.
Yes.
So that's something that's probably the most obvious difference between the two.
Yeah.
But other than that, the materials are quite similar. Even the manufacturers that you see in the US, you see them in the UK as well. Sometimes branded slightly different. Sometimes they're exactly the same. Like we do see with Rockwool, where they're trying to unify their brand across Europe and across the US, where it used to be called Roxol.
Roxol, yeah.
Now they're trying to, or they've brought in Rockwool, and they're trying to bring in then the same wording that we use in Europe, or RW3, RW5, RWA45. And I think they're starting to try change that over in the US as well.
Oh.
And then you have Kingspan, of course, which they have their Green Guard, their Cool Term boards and things like that. And that's all the same in the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, so let's jump into the supply chain issues, because that has probably affected your company a lot. I mean, y'all aren't the manufacturer, you're the middleman between the manufacturers and the customers. So you're on the, how to say, the end of this whole supply chain mess. You're dealing with this every single day. So did you see signs of this in 2019?
Pre-pandemic, there weren't really too many signs with regards to issues around supply. There were some where you'd have some manufacturers would kind of deliberately slow down manufacturing so that they could, prior to a price increase, you'd always find that all of a sudden within, the quarter running up to a price increase, all of a sudden you just couldn't get material. And a lot of that was kind of driven by, right, the price increase coming. We're going to reduce supply into the market so that when the price increase hits, it'll stick, because everybody's just going to need material and they'll pay anything for it. With regards to logistics, I think logistics is logistics really, and there weren't really too many issues pre-pandemic, but we've seen a complete change now post-pandemic with regards to logistics, because what's happened is you've so many drivers who have retired in the time that has been during the past 2 years, and those people new people haven't been brought in to replace them because nobody was working. Right, so you've a whole 2 years of people retiring. You also then have the likes of government payments to kind of where people weren't able to work, and you're getting government payments to stay at home. A lot of people have been asked to come back to work, but then chose not to come back to work because in a lot of cases they were earning as much money staying at home doing nothing, or maybe just a little bit less. Maybe they're earning $50 a week less or $100 a week less. But why go to work for $50 or $100? You
and
might
this
as well
is something you've seen in Europe and in the US. This is not exclusive to.
Yeah, it's Europe and the US. It's a big problem in the likes of Ireland and the UK, where people just not going back to work because of the payments. Now, a lot of these payments have stopped, and it's forcing people now that they have to go back to work. And you're starting to see that now with supply chain starting to ease, because with people not going back to work, that affects manufacturing, that affects the extraction of all the raw materials, that makes everything that keeps the world turning as such. So with all these people not going back to work, it then has a knock-on effect all down the line down with regards to not being able to get the material you need. Supply then starts to, or demand starts to outstrip supply. That then pushes prices up. And then what you have is what I call where you have pandemic market gouging. So it's actually where manufacturers putting the price up when you don't really need to. Like, we can all accept a certain number of price increases in the market, and that's fine. And I think pre-pandemic prices were quite low anyway. And I think there was a market correction that needed to happen at some point, because prices needed to come up a little bit. So a certain element of market correction is fine. You don't mind that. But what we have seen with some manufacturers, where they were just a price increase on top of a price increase on top of a price increase. And eventually then it hits a ceiling. And we've seen in the UK where manufacturers have done this over and over again, and they hit a ceiling, and then all of a sudden the price just drops. And it happened
is that
last
because
year.
customers finally said no, they were not going to accept this price, or did the other manufacturers in that area but purposely lower their prices to be a more viable alternative?
Yeah, so you'd have a group of manufacturers that they all make in around the same type of products. One goes up, another one goes up, and so forth. And then one goes up and no one else moves. And then they go, I shouldn't have done this. And then they drop their price. And then everyone just starts dropping. And like we seen over the course of a year last year on specific ranges of insulation products where they go up about 40% over the course of the year. And in the space of 30 days, it dropped 20%.
Wow.
Yeah, just hit the floor.
That's insane. So as a business, how do you keep track of all that? Do you have a whole team? Is part of this, is part of your business automated to keep track of these ever-changing prices?
Unfortunately, you can't automate that because there's so many changes. You would get manufacturers or our partners would just send in an email going on such and such a date, prices are going up 15% or 8% or whatever the case may be. And they won't even itemize the pricing. They'll just go blanket X amount of percent on this range and X amount of percent on this range. And you just be kind of adding in that margin on top of your cost each time. And then eventually when things settle down, we were getting our manufacturers to send us through itemized pricing, because when we send over a purchase order, when a customer buys something from us, then we send a purchase order to our supplier or manufacturer. You could be out a few cents or a few dollars on the purchase order, and there's corrections being made when invoices come in. So there's additional layer of work there. So now we're finding that the prices have stabilized. You're still getting the odd price increase here and there, but in general, pricing in the market has stabilized. And everybody is finding the time now to correct all the pricing that needs to be corrected, so that when purchase orders come across, they're going to match what they have on their side, etc. But certainly we did see pandemic market gouging going on. And it'll probably still happen for the next while, where people just put their prices up when they don't need to put their prices up because they can get away with putting their prices up. Everybody has accepted that prices are going up. So everybody is nearly happy to pay that little bit more for material. So, well, as well as that, they're obviously desperate to get what they need as well.
Yes.
So they'll pay whatever is needed for the material.
But you all have seen genuine shortages as well, right? You've dealt with ridiculous lead times, increasing lead times on insulation and roofing products. Are there specific examples that you have?
Yeah, you will see mineral wools, your glass wools, membranes, roofing membranes. Oh, nightmare. It's just so difficult. And in some cases, Belinda, we find that, you're not being told, we would have a fairly good idea what's in stock at any given time. But what's happening is that the materials in the warehouse, somebody comes in and might buy a few truckloads of material and take it away. And then the order we place with the manufacturer for new material to be replenished, and they'd say, right, your material is coming in on the 20th of the month. And we'd have orders coming in, and we'd be notifying our customers, right, you're scheduled in for delivery on the 22nd, on the 23rd, the 24th, and the orders are going out in line of as to when they came into us. And then the manufacturer doesn't deliver on the 20th, and we get in contact with the manufacturer, and they go, oh, we don't know when it's going to come in. We don't know when we're going to ship it. We're just there. But, we've all our customers waiting on the material. And you're telling us now, a delivery that was supposed to be in today, you're telling me now you don't know when it's coming in.
So how do you deal with that?
We're actually going to get it.
How do you deal with that? Is it just constant communication?
Yeah, it's constant communication, applying a certain amount of pressure to try get your material in as quick as you can. It's like the age-old story: he who shouts the loudest gets listened to. And that is the case in the times we're in right now, because there's so many different people looking for material. And I can understand the manufacturers to an extent. They're trying to spread the material out as much as they can around the country to try service as many different states as they possibly can. But the problem that we have is that it looks like we've messed up. It looks like we're the ones that are kind of letting the customer down. And it's not, because we were due to have material come in, and because there's such shortages, we don't have the warehouses full the way they used to be pre-pandemic, where if a truck didn't arrive, it didn't matter, because we warehouses of the material. So you'd pull the material from somewhere else and you'd get it in. There's no issue. It might be a couple of days delay or whatever, but now you could be talking 2, 3, 4 week delay, because they decided that they don't want to send a truck into So that's very difficult, and it's very frustrating as well. But it's like all things, you have to roll with the punches. You have to just carry on. Everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah.
We're not unique to anybody else.
But I guess that your company is different, because you can't expect the customer to compromise. They're going to your website and selecting a specific type of product. You can't go back to them and say, "Hey, mineral wool is no longer available for the next 3 weeks. We want you to switch to fiberglass, and that's what we're going to send you." That doesn't work with you. They're not asking you for advice. They're buying something specific from you.
Yeah, exactly. And, in most cases, it's fine. There's no issue. But when you do have an issue around when a specific mineral wool supplier doesn't bring in the material when they say they are, you're kind of left between a rock and a hard place. And, we will try work with our customers as best we can and offer solutions as well, because there are other alternatives too that can possibly be used. And in some cases, customers are happy to change and kind of go, yeah, okay, well, that'll work for the job. I mean, it's no different if you walk into your local lumber yard and you go, you know what, I'm looking for an R15. And they go, well, we don't have R15, but we can give you an R23, or we can give you an R13. Yeah, okay, fine. We'll compromise, because that's what you have. And unfortunately, we're finding ourselves now in a position where we were never in before, where our customers now sometimes have to compromise on what they're looking for. Where before, we used to pride ourselves on, if you come to insulation for US or roofing for US, you're going to get what you ordered, because that's what you're buying. We're different to the lumber yards. We have the material, it's there. We have the distribution agreements in place. Where now, because the manufacturers don't even have the material now in some cases, there is a certain amount of compromise that we have to make, and that the customer has to make. And look, things are getting better. I think as we look forward through this year and into next year, we're already seeing areas where supply is getting better. Some of the mineral wool suppliers are reporting new manufacturing plants open, new lines open. Same with the polyiso guys. The XBS board manufacturers are reporting the same. It's still tight, and there's still a massive demand and a big catch up to be done. But you can see there's more material coming into the market, and there's an ease in supply, and that'll just get better. And as well as that, as more people come back to work as well, like with around deliveries, where we're having issues with our delivery partners. Like, I mean, that's just been a nightmare across the US, because.
And you're talking about the 3PL, third party logistics delivery?
Yeah, because as I mentioned earlier about the drivers that had retired and them not being replaced, you also then have this scramble.
You've talked about this the last time, so that was fascinating. I didn't know about that. So there are a certain number of drivers that kind of leave the profession every year, and they are replaced by a new set of drivers that receive their licenses. But I think you mentioned for 2020, those driving schools were closed, and we didn't receive that new influx of drivers to replace the ones that had retired.
Yeah, exactly. And then what you had, Belinda, is that you have a case of a big scramble to get new drivers in, and drivers that are just not that good, right? And don't have the pride in the job that previous drivers would have had. And we've seen that in the UK, we've seen it in Ireland, we've seen it in the US. Anyone that could drive a truck was being drafted in to drive a truck. And that's the way it was. And when it came to handling goods, especially around insulation products, the care wasn't taken the way it used to be, because drivers just didn't realize how fragile the material was, nor did they care, because they were so busy doing so many runs. They were always in a hurry. So you have these drivers that aren't as good coming in now doing these deliveries and then doing a bad job. That's a reflection then on the company that sold them the material, to the customer. So That's an issue as well, but that's starting to improve again. Like, I mean, 3PLs or even logistic companies across the US, it's kind of like the Wild West, when it comes to shipping goods around the US, because, we'd have issues. I think I might have mentioned this to you before, whereby, we'd be delivering a pallet of rigid board insulation to a customer, and the price would be X to have it delivered. And they would take our pallet off the truck and they would weigh it to make sure the dimensions were right and the weight is right. And that's fine. And the next thing, we get a bill in the post. It could be $150 on top of the shipping cost, because they decide to take it off the truck and weigh it. And the weight is right and
I
the
know this.
dimensions are right. Like, as I've said to them before, if it was heavier than what we said it was, or the dimensions were different to what we said it was, well, then fine, charge me $150. But don't charge me $150 if everything I've said is correct and the weights are correct and everything is right. That's just you charging me an extra $150 for the shipment.
Yeah.
And there's no argument. They just charge you. And if you don't pay it, next time you just won't pick up your order.
That's insane.
So it's
It's
unbelievably difficult.
But you say there is some relief in sight. You have seen definite improvements to the supply chain, and even
definitely.
logistics.
Yeah. Supply chain is definitely getting easier, and the logistics is getting better. So, but it'll be towards the end of the year before you really start to see the changes come into play. Like, I mean, we're seeing it at a very low level here, but as the year goes on, it'll start trickling down more and more into more kind of areas where customers will actually notice a difference. I mean, we even see it with the likes of Amazon, etc., where, the supply of paper got really short there during the pandemic. And that was primarily because Amazon just needed more boxes. And that affected the construction industry, because it became very, very difficult to buy paper to make drywall.
Wow.
So people just couldn't get drywall anymore because Amazon was buying all the paper.
Oh my gosh.
So, all these things have a knock-on effect and you don't realize it, and then that's holding up construction jobs. And, so all these things just kind of, it all goes round in circles, really.
Wow. So you've weathered the storm for the past 2 years. How do you see Insulation for US or Insulation for Less and Roofing for Less growing in the next 5 years or so? Do you see yourself expanding into another business too?
I think, well, in the UK, so we have 3 sites in the UK. We've Insulation4Less.co.uk, we've Build4Less, and we also have Tiles for Less, which are kind of ceramic tiles and bathroom wall, floor tiles, etc. So we have the 3 websites in the UK. And then obviously in the US, we have Insulation for US and Roofing4US.com. I don't see us moving into any other areas yet in the US, because we want to get more growth in what we're doing, and we do have plans in around how we're going to achieve that. Like, I mean, already, our target this year was for 100% growth, and we've actually, at this point in time, we're ahead of that target.
That's awesome.
So,
congrats.
Yeah. So we're way ahead of our targets for this year. And of course that again will just get better. I think I mentioned to you before, like, there was a month there where we had, like, I think it was $90,000 in refunds because of just supply chain issues. It's just crazy, during the pandemic. As the supply chain issues ease more, that gives us more confidence to invest more into the business and kind of acquire more customers. And that obviously drives sales. So, I mean, our plan is 100% growth this year and then the same next year. And after that, we see what happens. I mean, everything is still up in the air too, regards to supply chain. I mean, there's a lot up in the air with Ukraine and what's happening over there. And that's going to impact things this year. Recovery, I don't think, is going to be as quick because of what's happening with that conflict. But hopefully things will calm down over there. But I don't see it happening anytime soon. Yeah, but but that is going to impact recovery for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Johnpaul, for sharing all that with us and explaining the whole supply chain issue mess. And I'm really happy to hear that your company is doing so well through all these tough times, and
Yeah,
hope to see you all continue to grow and add more inventory to your site.
for sure. Yeah, well, that's the plan. We just keep adding inventory for our contractors. So every week we've new supply chains being added to our websites, and new deals being done with manufacturers. So, and it's all for our contractors in mind, our roofing contractors and our insulation contractors.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to link all your websites and uh, to this
Great.
podcast. And thanks for joining us, Johnpaul.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks, Belinda.
Do you think pandemic price gouging is a real thing?
I didn't in the beginning. I thought it was just a conspiracy when everyone, like I heard rumors back in 2020, late 2020. People said that these spike in lumber prices is purely artificial. They lived right next to a lumber yard and they saw them purposely not working or hoarding materials, waiting for the price to spike. And I thought it was all a lie. I thought it was fake news.
Yeah, there were a lot of stories like that back in 2020.
Yeah, I thought it was a conspiracy. But I've talked to quite a few companies now that have first-hand experience with it and say that it isn't a lie. There's been a lot of shady business tactics going on over the past 2 years.
So can you explain to me what he was talking about, how the companies are raising their prices and then one drops it?
So he was referring to polyiso foam insulation in board form, the stuff that you use on the outside of homes. And his company, Build4Less, they source their products from a variety of different manufacturers. So he noticed last year, all these companies, like say 5 different companies, started raising their prices to pretty ridiculous levels that were just completely unwarranted. They had no reason to be raising it continuously by 10%, 20%, and it was consistent across the board. And he noticed it peaked in December of last year, where one company decided to increase it by 20%, and all the other companies decided it was enough, and they all dropped their prices. So everyone, like Build4Less and other suppliers, decided to purchase this foam insulation from the other 4 suppliers, and this one manufacturer was left hanging.
Yeah, so they have to continually keep track of all the prices out there and make sure that nobody's just going crazy with it.
Yep. And they're getting away with it. Eventually, that one manufacturer had to drop their prices to get in line with everyone else. But monitoring prices seems like a 24/7 job.
And it seems like these companies were just trying to get out ahead of what they knew was coming, these supply chain issues, and then also this inflation. And it's like they knew something and they wanted to get ahead of it and make sure they could lock in some of that money.
Maybe. I don't know if that's the case all the time, because Johnpaul was saying that one manufacturer in particular, they were using this price gouging techniques in 2018.
So hopefully there continue to be different alternatives that come out that people can use just in case. And hopefully Build4Less can supply other alternatives as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky to be just stuck on mineral wool insulation and say no to all types of slag wool, because then they have the advantage. They can raise their price, and you have to look at alternatives. You have to have competition in the market.
And that's one thing that definitely came out of this, the whole pandemic thing, was that people are looking at different ways of doing things. And hopefully these alternative products that you've been looking at, these eco-friendly products and stuff, will catch on more, because people say, hey, yeah, I didn't know this existed before, let's say 2020, but now it's become relevant and it's something I had access to, and it was available. So it expands and it grows.
Yeah, because scaling up is important. And if all these startups have a foot in the door right now, because the traditional insulation is either out of stock or too expensive, this is their opportunity to scale up, gain customer confidence, and become a really good competitor to traditional products.
So fortunately, it seems like there are some signs that the supply chain is relinking itself, let's say.
It's not broken anymore. Yeah. But right when recession is around the corner.
I don't want to say anything controversial, but maybe the blockchain helped fix the supply chain.
Oh, okay. I don't know about that. Blockchain is right now with cryptocurrency being dumped or having a downturn, blockchain is being thrown into that, unfortunately. Like, no, it's just always lumped together.
Yeah, it's almost like the blockchain has been categorized as a political issue. Like you're either on this side or you're on this side, and there's no in between. There's no liking blockchain for what it is without absolutely loving Dogecoin or something.
That's true, unfortunately. Yeah.
But back to the supply chain issues. Hopefully those are fixing themselves, and we see signs of improvement, and hopefully Build4Less is ahead of that.
As bad as this is, maybe a recession might, I don't want to say it's going to be a good thing, even though Elon Musk did just tweet out that it could be good for the whole world economy. But it could balance things out, balanced out supply and demand, and be a kind of a reset button.
Absolutely. That's the way I was going to describe it. Is it's a reset button that we need. As painful as it may be, it could help.
For businesses, for individuals, for the whole world. Not that we want it to happen, but it just seems like it's complete chaos right now. And I know we said there are some signs of supply chain recovery, but right when there are positive signs with that, something else seems to happen, that it just, there's no end in sight to all these problems. And as Elon said, there's just too much money being thrown out right now.
It all boils down to consumer spending is out of control.
Spending money we don't have. So we have to prepare for a possible recession, I guess.
But if you do need building supplies, this is not promoted, but you should go to Build4Less and check them out.
Yeah, so check out Insulation for US and Roofing for US if you need any building products. Hope you enjoyed this discussion on supply chain issues. Join us next week for another episode on building science, products, and technology. See ya.